I never thought my life would begin with a carefully tailored lie wrapped in white silk and sealed with a wedding ring. The expensive wedding dress hung in front of me like a smiling trap. My mother stood behind me, her hands gripping my wrists with the decisiveness of someone far too used to controlling everything. Her voice was ice cold. "Erica isn't coming. You have to take her place. There's no other choice." Mia. I was 24, a recent interior design graduate, and I never imagined I would enter adulthood under the name of my older sister, Erica. 3 years older, always the center of attention, of every expectation and every family plan, had vanished just 3 days before the wedding. To a blind man she'd never really cared about. "If this wedding falls through, we lose everything." My mother continued, her gaze cutting into me like a sharpened blade. "You owe us that." Oh, that word had been my label in this family for as long as I could remember. Oh, because I was born second. Because I wasn't Erica, because I once refused to be Dad's unpaid assistant. And now I owed them this wedding my sister had fled from. Erica left no explanation, only a single message, "Mia. I can't live like this, I'm sorry." But I couldn't run. I was the one who stayed, who stepped in, who kept going. For the past 6 months, I had been pretending to be Erica on every call with her fiancé, Elliot Warren, a successful blind entrepreneur who lost his sight in an accident 3 years ago, but remained a powerhouse in the medical tech industry. A man I'd never met. Yet I knew his morning habits, the tone of his voice when he was tired, and even how he breathed. When the silence stretched, it all started with a temporary favor. Erica didn't like speaking with blind people. "It throws me off," she told me. My mother just looked at me and said, "Your voice sounds like hers. Just help your sister out." Day by day, I was pulled deeper into the role. I learned to adjust my pitch to laugh like Erica, to reread her emails so I could reply the way she would. I even wore her perfume. Elliot never suspected a thing. Each call became a quiet performance, and I was the only one who knew both parts. And today, I stood before the mirror in the grace-filled church dressing room, the place where the wedding would be live-streamed on Elliot's family company's social platform. My mother closed the door behind her. I heard the soft rustle of the pressed gown, the scent of luxury perfume clinging to every fold. She said nothing more, just clasped a diamond necklace around my neck, sealing the agreement. "All you have to do is walk down the aisle, sign, the papers, be his wife. For a few months after that, disappear if you want," she said. Like giving stage directions for a minor role. I said nothing. Not because I agreed, but because my throat had locked up. At the end of the aisle stood a man. Elliot. Warren, black tailored suit, steady posture, his eyes gently closed, ace, serene as if listening to the heartbeat of a world I had never entered. I swallowed hard and walked toward him. Each step felt like falling into a bottomless void, where the only light was the fragile hope that maybe he would never truly see me, and I would never have to be seen. But deep inside my chest, a small, very small voice whispered the scariest question. If he knew I wasn't Erica, would he forgive me? Thunderous applause filled the chapel as I said, "I do." Under the soaring dome of grace-filled church, light from the crystal chandeliers broke into thousands of reflections, casting back an image of me, a bride. No one asked if she agreed. Elliot still stood there, his hand gently holding mine, not tightly, but enough for me to know he sensed something. Maybe the scent, maybe the quickened pulse, maybe the breath I couldn't steady. He couldn't see me, but there was something in his silence that made me feel like he was seeing me with something beyond sight. The reception afterward was a symphony of wine toasts and perfectly posed smiles. My mother floated through the crowd as if she had just secured a political victory. I sat beside Elliot at the long, satin-draped table, carefully picking at my food like it was part of an exam. Elliot didn't speak much, but the tilt of his head, the stillness in his posture, I could tell he was listening. Every clink of silverware, every breath I tried to regulate, he noticed. After the party, I followed him into a sleek black limousine leaving the city behind for the Warren estate near Lake Magnolia. I'd seen pictures sloped wooden roof stone path towering pines, but tonight they were all just blurry shapes outside the window as I sat beside a man who was now my husband, yet still a stranger. "You are trembling," Elliot said suddenly, not opening his eyes, his voice low and steady. I flinched, forced to laugh, masking everything behind a rehearsed line. "Just a little tired." "No," he replied calmly. "Your voice is different, softer, and a bit slower than usual." I turned to the window, gripping the fabric of my dress tightly. Scenarios ran through my mind. Deny it. Laugh it off, distract him. "Maybe it's just the big day," I whispered. Elliot didn't respond right away, but I heard him inhale, deep and slow, like someone catching a scent that didn't belong. "You're not wearing your usual perfume." I turned to look at him. His eyes remained shut, but every word pierced through the disguise. I had so carefully built, I forgot. I murmured. Silence settled again. The car glided down the empty road tires, soft against the pavement, and the faint sound of metal clinking as I nervously fiddled with the new ring on my finger. I never imagined that someone who couldn't see could make me feel so seen. Elliot didn't need eyes. He only needed a change in tone. In breath, in stillness to realize I wasn't Erica. When we arrived at the estate, the house greeted us with elegant darkness, not warm, not loud. Just the quiet of marble glass and climate control. Doors opened automatically, lights glowing softly. With each step, Elliot led me to the dining room. No late-night celebration, no champagne. Just 2 chairs, 2 play settings, and a single warm light above. He sat across from me, and then he asked, "Do you remember our first call?" I clenched my hands under the table. Erica told me she handed off the pointless calls. After a few weeks, I didn't know which one was the first. I couldn't answer. Elliot tilted his head slightly, his voice lower. "I talked about the lake house in Vermont, you said. You'd want to open a flower shop there, right?" I pressed my lips together, then softly replied, "Yes." Elliot nodded, and then he said something that nearly stopped my heart. Erica never liked flowers. I froze. I wanted to stand. Run. But instead of continuing, he set down his spoon and leaned slightly forward. "Is there something you want to tell me?" "Mia." For the first time, he said my name. Not Erica, not darling. "Mia." I bit my lip, trying to keep my tears from falling into the cold soup in front of me. And I knew the performance had begun to crack. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. As the pale light started to creep through the thick curtains, I was already in the kitchen, quietly learning how to make Elliot's preferred tea. No sugar, a slice of lemon water at exactly 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Not to play a role, not to continue the lie, but because I wanted to. I wanted him to start his morning gently, without any lingering doubt. I wanted him at least once to feel cared for without being used. When Elliot came down, his hair still damp, hand gliding along the polished wooden railing. I was just about to set the cup down. I placed it on the left this time, instead of the right. A habit. I hadn't even noticed until he brushed the handle and paused. "You place the tea on the left?" he said, as casually as if commenting on the weather. "I thought that's your dominant side." Erica never paid attention. There was no accusation in his voice, no suspicion, but I felt like he had just seen right through me. Elliot didn't say anything more. He just sat down, fingertips gently grazing the edge of the table. I poured the tea quietly. In my head, my mother and Erica's warnings still echoed like lines from a stage rehearsal. Don't let him find out. But I was starting to let the curtain fall. In the days that followed, I stopped calling the staff to clean his room. I wiped the tables myself and changed the sheets, rearranged the books in the library, a place no one had entered since the accident that took Elliot's sight. I touched every book, every old pen, and thought about the man he used to be. Not a millionaire, but someone who loved to read, who wrote in neat handwriting, who used to leave thank you notes on the first page of every novel he gave to others. That afternoon he stood in the doorway of the library, fingers trailing the edge of the desk. "Erica never came in here," he whispered. "I know," I said, still holding the bookshelf, "but I thought you might feel more at ease if it wasn't covered in dust." He said nothing, but his fingers tightened slightly around the back of the chair like he was holding on to something, slipping from his grasp. The next day, I asked him to take a walk in the garden behind the estate. For the first time, he didn't bring his cane. He walked slowly, my hand gently holding his wrist, not just to guide him, but so he could feel the rhythm of my steps. I told him about the blooming lavender, the burnt orange leaves of late-season maples. Elliot stayed quiet. But when I described the deep red dahlias in the garden corner, he suddenly asked, "Why don't you talk about tulips anymore?" I froze. Tulips were Erica's favorite, not mine. I forced a smile, though all I wanted was to run away from myself. Today, I thought other flowers deserved to be mentioned more. Elliot smiled a faint one, barely there. But it was the first since the wedding. That night I read to him in the living room. Not Shakespeare, not the books Erica used to choose. I picked a gentle short story about a girl who got lost, but found herself only after she stopped pretending to be someone else. When I stopped reading, Elliot spoke. "Your voice is different." I didn't answer. "It's warmer, and the way you touch me is different. Softer, not like someone playing a part." I set the book down, hands clutching the fabric of my nightgown. Elliot turned his head towards me. "If you're someone else, then I think I might like that person more." My heart tightened, not out of fear of being discovered, but because I had never hoped someone would truly choose me when I was just myself. Before I could respond, he added, like a quiet truth passed between two people, still unsure how to name what they feel. "I don't need eyes to know what's real." I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window watching the garden lights reflect on the lake's surface. I had entered this marriage playing a role, but every touch, every breath I gave him now wasn't acting anymore. I was dusting the empty picture frames in the library, the place Elliot once said no one had stepped into since he lost his sight, when a loud, impatient knock shattered the quiet. The door swung open before I could say a word. My mother walked in first, beige dress tailored to perfection, a glittering handbag hanging from her elbow like a carefully chosen weapon. Erica followed, golden curls curled to perfection, heels clicking confidently on the hardwood floor like this house had always belonged to her. "We need to talk," my mother said, eyes scanning the room as if measuring how far I had interfered. I set the cloth down and turned to face them. I thought everything was already clear. Erica laughed, the sarcasm unhidden clear. "Mia, do you think you're living in some kind of romance novel? Your role was to fill in, not to take over." I said, nothing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I already knew the script they were about to deliver. It was the same one I'd heard all my life. My mother stepped closer, standing right beside me, her voice low and sharp like a blade. "Do you even know he's about to open company shares to the State Medical Alliance? You think strolling with him in the garden and reading him stories is enough to keep your place?" Erica crossed her arms, circling the library like she was surveying damage. "You've gone too far. The staff has started calling you Mrs. Warren, because on paper I am the one who signed the marriage license," I replied, eyes locked on hers. She laughed like I had just told her a fairy tale. "Legal doesn't mean legitimate. He's mine. You know that." I clenched my fists. My heart was pounding. Not out of fear, but anger, not for me, but for Elliot Erica. I said, my voice low and steady. "He's not a prize to be wrapped up and handed over for the family's benefit." My mother frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm saying, for the first time someone saw me, not through a name, not through pity, but with real attention. He deserves someone who loves him for who he is, not for contracts, shares, or press conferences." Erica stepped in closer, her face just inches from mine. "Do you love him?" I didn't flinch. I don't know what to call this feeling, but I know even if one day he sees me and chooses to leave, I'll still be grateful that I got to love him sincerely. The silence thickened like the air had turned solid. My mother shattered the silence with a voice as sharp as scissors. "Don't fool yourself, Mia. You weren't born to be at the center. What you're best at is staying on the sidelines and accepting it." I turned away, gripping one of Elliot's old books on the table. The leather cover was worn the corner, slightly bent. He had written a note on the first page. "Every road has a turn. What matters is who's holding your hand. When it does." I turned back around, my gaze no longer uncertain. "You may think I'm weak. Erica may think I'm living in a fantasy, but at least I've been real. You ran away from a good man, and now you're back. Because you realize you lost the most valuable thing." I paused, then added, "You didn't come back for him. You came back for the title." Erica glared at me, but in that moment, I saw something hollow in her eyes, as if she too realized she had lost something she couldn't ever get back. The door suddenly opened. Elliot stood there, hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "I suppose I should let everyone say what they need to," he said, his voice calm but steady. The three of us turned. I froze. Erica stiffened, and my mother inhaled sharply, like the performance finally had an audience. But Elliot didn't look at anyone. He walked inside toward me and quietly said, "I'd like to take a walk. Would you lead me?" "Mia." The room fell silent. He had said my name not in the voice of someone betrayed, but in the voice of someone who had chosen to believe. That afternoon, the sky was a muted bluish-grey clouds, drifting slowly as if pondering something they couldn't say. I guided Elliot along the path around the lake, where fallen leaves blanketed the ground, and the scent of pine drifted in the early breeze. His hand rested gently on my arm, needing little direction, as if he had already grown familiar with every heartbeat guiding his steps. We said nothing for the first few minutes, but the silence between us no longer felt heavy. It was more like a buffer, something soft enough to catch the truth if it finally fell out. At last, he spoke first. Mia. I figured it out a long time ago. I stopped walking, but I didn't pull away. Since when I asked, my voice shaking, but not weak. He chuckled quietly. Not mocking, just like someone who already knew the answer, but wanted to see if he'd guessed right. The day you made different tea, the day you touched my hand, like you were afraid to wake something sacred, and the day you talked about purple chrysanthemums, a flower Erica once called dull. I swallowed hard, fragments of memories I thought I'd buried, reflected back at me like 1,000 broken mirrors. Then why didn't you say anything? Elliot paused. We stood in front of a stone bench beneath a canopy of red maple, a spot he once said he loved to read at when he could still see. He ran his fingers lightly across the bench and sat down. Because I didn't want to force a confession, he said slowly. I just needed to know. Were you staying out of obligation, out of fear, or because of me? I sat beside him. My hands trembled, but I didn't hide any more. No more borrowed smiles from Erica. No more artificial perfume or memorized tones. Just me. Mia and a truth waiting to be named. I'm sorry, I whispered. At first, I didn't plan to stay. I was just a temporary solution, a pawn. I stared straight at the lake, still and glassy. But then I saw you, not the wealthy blind man my mother and sister talked about. I saw someone who lived in silence, but never quietly. Someone who listened better than anyone who ever looked me straight in the eyes. Elliot said nothing. He just tilted his head, waiting for more. I took a deep breath, then said, I lied to you. I borrowed my sister's voice, her identity to step into your life. But everything I gave you afterward, the breakfast I made, the book I chose, the stories I told, they were real. He turned his face toward me, though his eyes had never seen me. There was something clear in them now, as if he had just heard a confession. He'd been ready to forgive all along. And my name, I said, almost in a whisper, isn't Erica? Elliot nodded. I know. Then he looked up, his voice deep but not cold. Mia, just one word. But the way he said it made my entire world collapse and rebuild itself in the same moment. He didn't shout. He wasn't angry. He didn't ask why or how could you. He just said my name, as if it had never been a mistake, never been a stain, but the most right thing he could say. I looked at him, my eyes stung, but this time I didn't hide my tears. Elliot reached out and gently placed his hand over mine, his thumb brushing over my cold knuckles. Thank you for choosing to stay, he said softly. Even just for a moment, I tightened my grip on his hand. If tomorrow you open your eyes and don't recognize me, I'll still be here, because I don't want to run anymore. He didn't reply, but his hand held mine a little tighter, like a silent promise still waiting to be spoken. That morning, the sun bathed Stanford Hospital in light, but the hallway where I sat was cold enough to make me shiver uncontrollably. I clasped my hands in my lap, eyes fixed on the recovery room door where Elliot lay after nearly 7 hours of surgery. No one could say for sure what the outcome would be. Odds were vague, but he chose to believe not in his eyes, but in hope, and maybe a part of that belief was in me. When the nurse opened the door and signaled that I could enter, my heart dropped. The room was blindingly white, monitors beeping steadily, everything sterile and unnervingly still. Elliot lay there, bandages still around his eyes, though the outer layer had been removed. I stepped closer, afraid to touch his hand, just watching his breath, as if it could vanish at any moment. Then he opened his eyes slowly, cautiously, fully conscious. His pale blue eyes, once a place where only darkness lived, now shimmered with light like they were brand new. He blinked several times. The brightness, perhaps too much after so long, I stood frozen. I didn't know if I was the first person he wanted to see or the last. Elliot looked around the room, shifting slightly to adjust to the space. Then his gaze landed on me. No shock, no recoil, just recognition. He looked at me like he had always known I looked this way, like my face wasn't new to him, but the final piece of a puzzle he had been piecing together through memory and feeling. I opened my mouth to say something, to apologize, to explain, to simply say his name. But nothing came out. He was the one who broke the silence first. "You're not Erica." His voice was soft, not accusing, but clear, like a statement that had been quietly decided long ago. I nodded, my throat dry. "No, I'm Mia." A second passed. Then he tilted his head, eyes still on me. "I know." No rage, no blame. I stepped closer to the bed, slowly placing my hand on the edge of the mattress. I was going to leave right after the wedding. I didn't think I'd be brave enough to stay. "But you did," he replied, his gaze deep like it reached the furthest corners of my heart. I nodded gently. "Because of you, Elliot." Exhaled slowly. Then just as slowly he raised his hand just enough to let his fingertip touch the back of mine. "There's always been one thing I feared," he said. "That if I ever saw again, the world wouldn't look the way I imagined. That the people who promised to stay would be gone. That what felt familiar might have been an illusion." I tightened my grip. "Hey, I can't promise to be perfect. I can only promise to be honest." Elliot looked at me for a long time, as if reading the words hadn't spoken the spaces between each quiet sentence. Then he said, "If tomorrow morning when I wake up you're still here, then stay. Not because I need you, but because I want to start over with you. My heart skipped a beat. Not if you apologize, not if you prove something, just if you choose to stay." I sat down in the chair beside his bed, took his hand. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. But my eyes reflected the sunlight pouring in through the window, and something new settled gently in my chest. "No longer fear, but quiet courage," I whispered. "Then tomorrow morning, I'll be the first thing you see." He smiled just a little. But it was the first smile I saw, not through his voice, but with his eyes. 1 year later, on a misty April morning, I opened the door to our cabin near the edge of the pine forest on the outskirts of Ashland, Oregon. No bright lights, no grand wedding, no more pretending, just me. Mia, living a life without disguise. Our home sat beside a small lake, surrounded by red maples and tall pines, where forest birds came to sing every morning. But what made the place special wasn't the scenery, it was the people. We called it Horizon Center, a space for those newly blind. "Elliot chose the name," he said. "Even if we can't see the horizon clearly, everyone deserves to move toward their own light." I was in charge of orientation sessions, helping students navigate using spatial awareness, sound, and memory. Each day I taught them how to walk the trails by sensing wind shifts, footstep echoes and vibrations in the earth beneath their feet. Some came in trembling eyes, still adjusting to the dark. But after just a few weeks, they could make it to the lakeshore on their own. As for Elliot, he was something no curriculum could define. After the successful surgery, he didn't return to high-end conferences or corporate boardrooms. He chose to teach music here every Tuesday and Friday morning. His class had no chalkboards or lesson plans, just a piano at the center of the room, a few wooden chairs around it, and the sound of students laughing as Elliot led them into music through stories and play. I often stood outside the window, watching him place his hands on the keys like he was retelling a gentle memory. Some days he wouldn't teach at all. He'd just talk with the students about how sound had changed the way they experienced life, and somehow that meant more than any note. Each evening after all the sessions were done, we sat on the porch drinking tea, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. Sometimes we didn't say anything at all, but our silence no longer needed filling. It brought peace. One evening I asked him, "Do you ever regret giving everything up?" He didn't answer right away, just looked out at the lake, his eyes quiet like water without ripples. No, because I used to live in so much noise, and still never heard the one thing that mattered most. I knew he wasn't just talking about his old job. He was talking about me. Since the day we chose to live, honestly, there's been no pretending, no Erica, no phone calls with borrowed voices, just me. The woman who stepped into his life through a lie but stayed with her whole heart. Occasionally visitors came to Horizon Center out of curiosity, wanting to meet the blind millionaire who married the wrong woman and found true love. Elliot would just smile and invite them to try a class. No one ever left seeing things the same way. I remember one time a 12-year-old boy named Liam, who had just lost his sight in an accident, asked Elliot, "Aren't you scared? Waking up and seeing someone who didn't look like how you imagined?" Elliot smiled. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, then turned to me. I saw the right person, just not at the right time. The boy didn't fully understand, but I did. Every day, here is a day of healing. Not just for those learning to find light through different senses, but for me. Someone who once thought she didn't deserve to be loved for who she really was. And if someone asked me what the greatest light I've ever found is, I would say, it's not the light from outside. It's the man who chose to believe in me even before he'd ever seen me. Oh yeah, the man who still places my teacup on the left side each morning. One early autumn morning, when mist still hovered over the lake, I heard the piano from the classroom. It was the unnamed melody Elliot played on special days. Not too sad, not quite joyful, but like a story waiting to be heard till the end. I stood outside the door, not stepping in right away. In that moment, I saw him not as a man who had once lost his sight, not as a millionaire who left behind fame, but as someone living fully in every beat, every note. He knew I was there. When the music stopped, he turned toward me and smiled gently. "I'm writing the final part." I stepped in, sat beside him, my hand resting on the keys. Not playing, just feeling the silent connection. For the song, I asked softly. Elliot nodded for everything, for the life before, for the new beginning, and for you. I looked down at my hands, the ones that used to shake from fear of being found out, of not being loved for who I truly was. Now they no longer trembled. They had learned to hold on not by force, but by choice. We kept writing that melody together, not with ink and paper, but by how we lived. Every class we taught, every step we helped and won take. Past fear every evening on the porch, just listening to each other breathe. Sometimes I still think of Erica. She left again this time for herself. And I don't blame her anymore. We all have our paths. Maybe she's finding her way back to herself too. As for me, I don't need to be extraordinary. I don't need to become someone else to be loved. All I needed was one person, someone like Elliot, to see me, without ever opening his eyes to choose me, even knowing I had once been a lie, and to love me like it was the only truth in a world full of doubt. And that's how we live, not perfectly, but truly by the lake. Beneath that simple wooden roof, we've built a love that doesn't need to shout, but strong enough to silence every voice that once made me doubt my worth, Mia. And Elliot's story isn't just about love overcoming deception. It's proof of how honesty heals. In a world where appearances often fool the heart, they chose to believe in what can't be seen: forgiveness, the courage to be real, the desire to be loved for exactly who you are. That's how they created a new life. Simple yet profound. Because sometimes the truest light doesn't come through the eyes, but from a heart that knows when it's found the right person. What do you think about Mia's choice and Erica's ending? Can love truly heal all wounds? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more moving family stories.